Heat and humidity are coming back, and there's a risk for some severe weather on Tuesday. But once we get through with that, doesn't look like there's going to be much rain in the northern mid-Atlantic states from Wednesday right into this coming weekend as our pattern of, let's call it 2 days on, 1 day off continues. All that and much more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. And here's America's top trader, TV's big dealer, Monty Hall.
Oh, was he here tonight?
He would be, but he's resting in peace.
Yes. He lived a good long life. I want to tell you, he lived to be like 96 years old.
Well,
So
he had.
he was
I don't know. I, I,
he was pretty
I,
good.
I never read too much about how much he enjoyed his work, but obviously, to me, I would guess that he probably did very much to
He
carry
he
out
he
carry it on
always,
for so many years.
he always felt that he was a 350 hitter in Triple A. He really felt that he deserved more. Oh, and he made a lot of money as the host of Let's Make a Deal, but felt that he should have gotten more of an recognition. And you talk about Jerry Lewis and his muscular dystrophy charity. Monty Hall was very big into charities. He donated millions of dollars to charity. But I don't know how we got on the subject about Monty Hall. I do want to say, however, Joe, that it was another reasonably good day out there today here in the tri-state area with sunshine, moderate levels of humidity, nothing completely uncomfortable. But tomorrow will be a whole different story as we look for the possibility of some nasty weather moving in by late afternoon tomorrow as the weather front, approaching cold front, moves in. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that. The tropics are quiet right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
Yes. I don't know about you. I was just looking at tomorrow with this severe weather risk. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. Lately, these severe weather risks have tended to underperform, and I'm wondering whether that's going to be the case again tomorrow. Of course, when jumping on that side of the bandwagon leaves me open to the possibility that it does wind up being more robust. You could probably argue it in both directions. I just wonder though, with the trough the way it is coming through, and it's a nice little short wave, and there's going to be definitely a relatively unstable atmosphere. But I wonder whether this is going to be another one of these instances where the storms are going to peak out in intensity because of the timing sometime during the early evening hours, say when they were in eastern Pennsylvania, western New Jersey, which of course, if that is the case, then those areas obviously are going to get some rough weather. But then this may wind up being another instance where by the time those storms reach the coastline, there might not be much left to it. And by the way, if you're looking for a big rain out of this, uh, what we really need is a widespread rain event, some kind of stalled front with a wave on it, and the continuous rain for a good solid 12 to 18 hours. A line of thunderstorms that's going to pretty much be in and out in less than an hour is not going to cut it as far as significant rainfall is concerned.
Yeah, you need a little bit more. You need one of those gentle, soaking, several day duration rains, and you get a half an inch or three quarters of an inch in an hour's time. That just isn't going to cut it. A lot of that will probably run off because the ground is so hard in the aftermath of so many days without rain.
Yeah, and then of course it's back to, although it still might get up close to 90 on Wednesday, and tomorrow certainly is going to probably be upper 80s and low 90s. Probably get up close to 90 on Wednesday, but then I think you're going to see a little bit of a humidity break again Thursday and Friday. Maybe not quite as extreme as what we just saw yesterday, for example, where dew points in a lot of spots got down into the 40s. But we could certainly see another one of these drier air masses, quote unquote, come in for Thursday, Friday into Saturday. and then turn warmer and more humid as we head into Sunday. And then guess what? There's the next cold front that'll be coming through. The upper pattern, I looked through everything last night, and I looked through everything today. I mean, I don't see. I mean, I've heard a few people, a few people jumping on prolonged heat for the latter part of the month. I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. I don't know, but it's hard for me to imagine us getting into a pattern of it being hot for a long period of time with the upper high where it is, and it's going to be going more toward the west than it is going to be moving to the east. So I don't know how you're going to pull this off.
Well, it's summertime, and I do agree with you that the after tomorrow the humidity will come down, not a whole heck of a lot, but enough to maybe keep us or put us back in a somewhat more tolerable pattern for Wednesday into Thursday, and then we'll be looking at that buildup of humidity again for this upcoming weekend. But hey, what do you expect? It's July,
Right.
and
And
it,
by
and so
the
far only 4 days so far this month of July have seen temperatures at or above 90 in Central Park. And tomorrow and Wednesday, we'll take a run at it. But, I'm not not concerned, but I'm not overly convinced that Central Park may hit 90 tomorrow. If there are a lot of clouds that build up in the approach of this weather front, we may see some showery weather late tomorrow, thundery weather. It may just fall shy of 90 again
Or
tomorrow.
if a few renegade cells form around midday, which a couple of models are hinting at. By the way, just to be clear, I do not consider in my book upper 80s to around mid 80s to around 90 degrees to me is not. I don't consider that hot. I consider that very warm. I do not.
Yeah,
I don't consider it hot. When I speak of prolonged heat, I'm talking about days, many days in a row, 5 or more, that we're seeing highs at 94, 95, 96, and higher. That to me is a heat wave. You streak out 90 degrees or higher over a span of 8, 9, or 10 days. That's a heat wave. But 88 for a high is not to me anyway, Joe. I don't consider that hot. That's actually the average high this time of year is mostly middle to upper 80s. Okay, you want to push the envelope and say, okay, maybe it's upper 80s to near 90 when you get down south of Philadelphia to Washington D.C., Baltimore. Okay, I get that, but that's what it's supposed to be. So what's the big deal if it goes to 87 or 88 or 89? That's in that what I would regard as the margin of error. If you're a couple of degrees above normal or a couple of degrees below normal, to me that's kind of that's average. It's like a margin of error there. You start pushing 5 degrees above normal, 6 degrees above normal this time of year. That's a different story, and I'm just not seeing it. Not for the Northeast and not for the Northern Mid Atlantic states anyway.
I agree with you. National Weather Service in Albany seems to like calling temperatures in the mid 80s or the upper 80s hot. I disagree with that. 80 to 85 warm, 85 to 88 very warm. I think you have to get to or above 90 before you use the word hot. And again, I agree with you. It's something that the semantics are different from, I guess, one weather service forecasting office to the other. But when I see them say hot and I see a high of 85 predicted, I disagree. I mean, I don't see. Obviously, if it were December, I would say, yeah, of course. But
All right.
it's July. Reserve the word hot for 90 or above.
Right. It's I always used to say seasonally adjusted. There are no winters in Maine because during the months of January, February, and March, that's what it's supposed to be. So again, middle to upper 80s this time of year because we're now getting into that peak of the average highs and average lows. Um, uh, that's what it's supposed to be. Meanwhile, as we as I bring up the U.S. satellite loop tonight with the flashing uh, lightning strikes that are going on. Not a whole heck of a lot, really. I mean, whether the satellites still showing not quite cloud-free skies, but let's call it partly to mostly clear skies in the Northeast down into Virginia. There's some thunderstorms in South Georgia inching northward, but they're scattered. There's some thunderstorms down along the immediate Gulf Coast. You could see that system everybody was getting all worked up over because NHC had the X in northwest Georgia. Well, that has now dropped down into the Gulf of Mexico. However, the upper air environment in the Gulf of Mexico right now is very hostile to tropical cyclone development. If you look at the clouds, they're actually blowing northeast to southwest. So this is not a
Right.
situation that's conducive for tropical cyclone development. These sorts of systems, especially when they're upper troughs like this one, they got to sit out there for 4 or 5 days and slowly make a transition over into something that's a little more tropical, assuming that the upper air supports it. And right now, it doesn't look to me like the upper air supports it. We've got some storms moving through the Great Lakes, and some of that is severe weather. We're going to take a look at that in a moment. You got the monsoon going on in the southwest, but the northern and central plains, most of the central plains anyway, and the northern plains, finally getting a break for the folks in Montana who've been clobbered with severe weather for the better part of a week. That's done. And it's dry to Washington and Oregon, down to California on the left coast.
I'm just looking at, looking away from the contiguous United States for the moment. Here's a storm we should have mentioned yesterday on Joe and Joe, but we didn't. And that is the new hurricane out in the Pacific,
All right, one moment.
Darby.
One moment, please. What's the coordinates on that one anyway?
Darby?
I never mind. I found a loop that's right over it. The standard Pacific loops that they have are, with those fixed shots. The one that's furthest to the east doesn't go far enough east, and for some reason I can't seem to. I'm trying to get into at the GOES image viewer site. I just clicked on the storms button and I clicked on Darby, and nothing coming up. It just occurred to me, by the way, that they could have had, if Andorra were naming tropical cyclones, Joe, we would have a Hurricane Durwood, Hurricane,
Durwood.
right, Denton, Darby could have been one too. Yeah, for some reason it's not going to the storm page. Let's see if I can go to the actives. Maybe that'll do something. Yep, there we go. Finally.
Darby, by the way, is I heard the name and I said, Darby? That's an interesting
Hansel?
name.
Hansel?
It's an English
Hansel?
It's an English locational surname and has become a given name. The prefix derived from the Old Norse "djur," meaning deer, and the suffix "beer," meaning farm or settlement. The oldest recorded surname dates back to 1160 to 1182 in Lincolnshire in the British Isles. Darby was a common pre-1800 alternative spelling of Derby, which was a city in England. So we've been accustomed to tropical storm names that are named after Hispanic, for example, or Dominican names, but this is the first time I could remember a tropical system that is actually coming after a British or UK name, Darby. And boy, did this thing develop real fast. It took shape mid-afternoon on Saturday. It is now up to a Category 4. It's a small storm, a tight little storm, but it is a very potent storm. Again, with Category 4 winds. Now, you say to yourself, okay, this is in the Pacific. Does it have any, let's say, for Hawaii? Apparently not, because as it moves over the next 48 to 72 hours, it will encounter unfavorable conditions that will allow it to weaken rather rapidly. And it was in 5 days, when it's just about reaching the big island of Hawaii, it should be down to a depression. But right now, it is loaded for bear. And you can see on the loop that Joe has up on the screen, you could see that it is a classic looking, albeit smallish hurricane, and it certainly has a very well defined eye, too.
Yeah, I'm trying to read the coordinate numbers here. They're so darn small. I see where 10 north is. I'm assuming. All right, so the middle, it's right along 15 north, and what is that? 100 and what is that? 125 west? Yeah, I mean it's already pretty far out there. And in fact, if you look up on the very top of the loop, it might be able to see it. But just north of 20 degrees north, where the water temperatures really start to cool off, you can almost see the beginnings of the bank of, what looks like semi-permanent low clouds that are off the coast of California and extend down, south to in some places as far south as 20 degrees north. So yeah, it's probably not going to strengthen too much more because as it continues to gain latitude here, once it gets north of, say, 16, 17 degrees north, it's going to start coming into cooler water, and probably there's some shear to the west that's going to be impacting this. And I will let's put up the Hurricane Center's forecast on the tropical weather outlook page, nhc.noaa.gov. By the way, on the 8 o'clock for the system in the Gulf of Mexico, they basically did what we often refer to as running the tape, which is pretty much repeating the prior, whatever they wrote in the prior uh, discussion, or the bulk of it. Very little's changed from it, but they're still going 10 and 30 in the next 5 days. West at 15, 954 millibars, maximum sustained winds at 140 miles per hour. And here's the forecast track: a major hurricane through the day on Tuesday kind of straddles that 15-degree north line, and then it starts to move further north. And then you see by 8 a.m. Thursday, they have it down to a tropical storm. By 8 a.m. Saturday, when it's west of 150 west, it is weakened down to a depression, or even a remnant depression. If they got the circle with the white in there, so that usually means that they've made it post-tropical to an extent. And just a quick read. Let me just do a quick read on the discussion here. Blah 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 blah. A little bit of
The
additional
Hurricane Center
sensitivity,
says that
25 knots. Wind shear low through 48 hours, but then sea surface temperatures start to drop below 26 C, which should begin a weakening trend by Wednesday. Vertical wind shear then begins to increase more after 48 hours. More rapid weakening, blah 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 blah, and there you have it. So the Hurricane Center agrees with our analysis, which should not be a surprise to anyone.
well, they also
Just
on the
kidding.
discussion they said that they also say on the discussion that the eye exhibits a classic stadium effect, and the visible images are the presentation on visible images is similarly spectacular. So it is a textbook, a classic hurricane, but it does not look like it's going to be doing very much. They were making comparisons, Joe, in terms of the fact that it's a small system. It says it looks very much like Dorian in 2019 when it was near the Bahamas. And the person who wrote the discussion, who wrote this discussion here? This was Papin. And Papin says that, like Dorian, also suspects the eye wall cloud tops have warmed a tad due to diurnal fluctuations and could cool once again during the typical nighttime maxima. They're talking about here convective cloud tops. And at the top of these clouds, the temperatures are hovering. Get this now. You talk about cool cloud tops, 65 to 75 degrees below 0 Celsius. I mean, that's cold, folks.
Yeah, that is. And by the way, just to give you an idea of how small it is, off the marine advisory, the radius of hurricane force winds, 10 nautical miles northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest of the center. And gales only extend 50 miles northeast, 40 miles southeast, 30 miles southwest, and 50 miles northwest of the center. That's how small this thing is, okay? It's maybe not quite the size of a pea, but it's darn close.
It is, and thank you to Leon Probitsky for hitting super chats tonight. He's got the cheering, roaring fox. At least it looks like a fox. Is it a fox? Looks like the fox is punching.
Uh,
I don't know, a punchy fox. Anyway, thanks, Leon,
and
for
also and also Birder
prediction
Lady
tonight.
hitting super chat tonight. Thank you very much, Birder Lady. She doesn't have a an emoji on there, but I'm sure she's sending that with a nice Birder Lady smile.
Yes.
And we appreciate that. All right, let's go to lay radar. And we I had someone post a comment on one of my earlier videos. Happy that we're mentioning what's going on around the Great Lakes tonight, and we are more than happy to oblige. But you can see these showers and thunderstorms moving across northern Michigan and coming out of northeastern Wisconsin, across Lake Michigan. Oddly enough, where the Storm Prediction Center has severe weather risks, there's not a whole lot going on right now where they have the slight risk indicated from northeastern Illinois into southern Michigan. There's not a whole lot there. There's a couple of cells that are starting to roll in off the lake north of Grand Rapids, and those are moving east. At the moment, we do have special marine warnings out in Lake Michigan, but we don't have any land-based warnings at this moment, which is 7:53 Eastern Time, 6:53 Central. And of course, if you're watching this on a replay or even just a little later this evening, just be advised that these radars and satellites and our comments about severe weather are dated. So please go to your local National Weather Service forecast office page, weather.gov, to get the absolute latest weather information regarding severe weather. It looks like that's part of that cold front that's coming here for tomorrow. So, I mean, if you want to look at this and make an argument and say, well, it looks like it's underperforming somewhat today, so does it doesn't necessarily mean it will underperform tomorrow, but uh, it's not I would just I would look at it as a possibility, as a sign that maybe this is uh, going to underperform. When you're looking at something that you think is going to be a robust severe weather outbreak, you sort of look at what's going on the day before, and if you see that it's robust the day before, there's a pretty good shot that it'll be robust the next day too, assuming that the dynamics are there. Uh, right now, I'm a little underwhelmed by it. Gulf Coast seeing some showers and storms, producing some heavy rains in southern Georgia. We certainly could use it up in North Georgia, even though we did have a fair amount of thunderstorms. I did anyway over Friday and over the weekend. A couple of good soakers, but not everybody got into those, so we could use something a little more widespread. Also seeing some stuff down on the Florida Panhandle near the Alabama border around Mobile. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings there. A few scattered cells in southeast Louisiana and back scattered well inland in Texas. The monsoon is busy in the southwest with a fair amount of showers and thunderstorms in New Mexico and Colorado and Arizona and Utah. Looks fairly busy on the radar there. Quiet up in the northwest where it's been busy for such a long time. And that's about it. The Storm Prediction Center for tonight, let me just back this up one day. So for tonight, we have that slight risk area from northeastern Illinois, northern Indiana, northwest Ohio. Probably you'll see some storms there form during the overnight, I suppose. And in southern Michigan, I want to see if they have any kind of watches up. And we'll take a look there. And judging from the map that is up right now, it doesn't look like they don't have any severe thunderstorm watches up. Tomorrow, Joe, they extended the risk further to the north, all the way up into northern Maine. And I have to tell you, I was a little surprised that they didn't do that sooner because the trough is actually a little stronger, and a little more dynamic the further north you go. So I was kind of thinking today that the higher probabilities of thunderstorms could wind up being more in northeastern New York and up in northern New England as opposed to the southern end of this down in Pennsylvania and into northern Maryland.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I also would agree that the models that I looked at, they show kind of a thin or narrow band of convection moving through sometime around 6, 7, 8 o'clock tomorrow night, but it does not look like something that would be. I mean, like you look at what they have projected for tomorrow, and you say, "My goodness, they must be, thinking that there's going to be a massive concentrated squall line, but the models don't show that. Now, I don't know, you're right. In recent days, the Storm Prediction Center folks have been, overdoing things, and this may very well be another case of it being overdone, but we'll see. We'll see how things start developing midday and afternoon tomorrow. And you mentioned also there could even be a couple of renegade cells that could cross through portions of the tri-state area in advance of the main band of precip, which again is expected late in the afternoon and early tomorrow evening.
And the bottom line is, in terms of the audience's approach to this, if you're watching for the first time or if you've watched for a while, you may have certainly heard me say this. You acknowledge the fact that the risk is there. You acknowledge the fact that the dynamics are there for some stronger thunderstorms to develop. That's a given. It's not written in stone that they're going to happen, and it's going to be one of these things again where you could get these line segments of thunderstorms that only cover a certain amount of geography. So if you're outside of that, you may not get much of anything. So the bottom line is, we could talk about storms all day long, and I'm not trying to downplay when the risk is there. Obviously, you should pay attention, but you should also be cognizant of the fact that sometimes it doesn't quite happen the way you think it's going to happen, and some places get hit hard, and other places not so much. And I know some people do get not the people that watch this show, obviously, because they're much more weather savvy. Some of the folks are very weather savvy, but you get some folks that just get absolutely pissed off that they were forecasting thunderstorms and we didn't see anything. And you always know what my response to that is, Joe, right?
Right. Right.
I'm sorry you didn't
Excuse
get
me.
the tragedy you were looking for. Maybe next time. Uh,
Everybody's always it's always been that way. In 1910, Halley's comet was going to come very close to the Earth. The tail of the comet presumably passed over the Earth. There were newspaper articles in advance suggesting everybody would die of asphyxiation and there would be, the end of the world and
oh,
everything else like
Billy,
that.
Billy the
And then
kid,
the day
Billy the
after,
kid would love that.
and the day after the comet passed, everything was back to the way it was. And there were some people who actually looked that they were disappointed that everything was just the same.
Right. Bet on the apocalypse, folks, and just always remember you can only be right once, and if you are right, you're never no. There's no way for you to collect on that bet. Okay, so bear that in mind. The WPC rainfall forecast for the next 7 days, obviously ample across the central Gulf Coast, with 5 inches or more. In fact, what's that? Bright yellow is actually 10 inches. Little circle of 10 inches over parts of the Mississippi, Alabama coast and a small portion of the westernmost Florida panhandle, and several inches of rain extending into central and northern Florida, even into southwest Florida, up into Georgia, including me. So I'm kind of hoping actually that this verifies, because we certainly could use some rain here on the northern end because it's been so dry. Up to as much as an inch and a half into North Carolina, on top of the rain that's already fallen there over the last several days. And you get a bit of a break, eastern PA to southern New England down to northeast Virginia. It's mostly a quarter to a half an inch with whatever convective activity we get from this cold front. And then there's another one maybe next Monday. Meanwhile, also up in New England, a bit more in terms of rain, half to 3/4 of an inch there. But here also, you'll get pockets where it's under a quarter of an inch. A little bit over in the western lakes, up into Minnesota. The southwest monsoon continues to be rather active. Light precip up in Montana, and the rest of the country is bone dry. Now, the long range pattern today, I've got the 12Z GFS 500 millibar, Joe. We look at the jet stream pattern for the next couple of weeks. I see, we could have put this to, we could have taped a long range basically a week and a half ago and just ran the video to cover the show, but because it's the same nonsense. take instead of watching where the troughs are, folks, look at where the upper high is. Okay. And by the way, I drew this earlier today, and I had drawn it for Wednesday night. Uh, so this is for Wednesday night, okay? And the arrows I drew in show you where our air is coming from. And you can see where the upper high is. Now, I'm going to move this along, and I'm just going to leave those arrows up there and where the upper high is. And you'll notice as we go through Saturday and Sunday, the upper high is pretty much in the same spot. The trough in the east is pretty much in the same spot. It weakens a little bit and pulls out. And guess what? You start to get the upper high strength and stretching toward, say, the weekend of the 23rd, 24th, flattening and stretching east-west. But guess what? Here we go at 318 hours, Joe. Now, I haven't, again, I drew those arrows are for this coming Wednesday night. They also match up almost perfectly for Sunday, July 24th. Trough in the east, ridge in the Rockies, if you're in the northern plains, if you're in the Rockies, if you're in the western plains, if you're on the edge of that upper high on westward, that area and down into Texas, you're gonna continue to bake, but not in the east with this upper trough. And I'll just take that off and just roll this to the end of the forecast period. And here comes another one, July 27th, dropping down into the eastern part of the United States. And by the way, if anybody wants to know where the Bermuda High is, there isn't much of a Bermuda High. It's actually more of an Azores. Yeah, and it's centered more near the Azores, and then goes south and west down into the Bahamas. It's not built back westward where it goes all the way inland of the East Coast. We're not seeing that at all. So it's not that. It's flat and it's weak, and that's allowing all these troughs to continue to drop into the eastern part of the United States.
And I'm kind of wondering why the Climate Prediction Center is calling for above normal temperatures, probability of above normal or warmer than normal temperatures here in the Northeast over the next 6 to 10 days. Because with these troughs and these upper lows sweeping on through every so often, how is that possible? I mean, that seems to indicate to me, at least, near or even below normal.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is if we get into one of those 3-day stretches where the trough lifts out and then the ridge starts to flatten out a little bit, those will be we've been getting these stretches like tomorrow and Wednesday where it gets up close to 90. I think at most that's what you'll see. And I'm looking here on the 18Z run where there actually is a little bit of a high near Bermuda that tries to build back westward because this model run drops a trough down into the Mississippi Valley. So the heat ridge gets basically split in half. You got the heat ridge getting pushed further west, and you get an upper high that builds for a short time off the southeast coast of the United States. Now on this run, Joe, the troughing in the east is a bit weaker, but this is one of the off-hour runs. And by the way, by the end of the period, look at the trough it has on July 27th in the eastern part of the United States. The westerlies go all the way down to Florida. Take a look. I don't know how much of a delay you have on your screen.
No, I see. I've seen that.
Excuse me.
And we've seen a lot of that this summer. We've seen a lot of these northwesterly or northerly flows penetrate all the way down into the southern states. So this has been an atypical summer for the upper airflow.
That's impressive. How deep is that upper low? 561, 558, 552. 552 height there in James Bay, on the 27th of July, right around the statistical peak of high temperatures. That's impressive. That is an impressive upper low if that were to verify. And it's so far out in the long range, obviously it may not be there. I just want to see what the European did today.
And all the winter weather lover people are saying right now, I know it's going to happen. It's going to be that way for the rest of the summer. And then when it comes into our neck of the woods, when it comes into our time of the year that we hope for such patterns like that, they'll build a gigantic ridge over the eastern United
Well, I
States
was,
or the eastern.
actually, even worse. We'll have this pattern right through November, so that you're thinking, oh my God, we're having we're in a pattern where we're getting uh, really impressive cool shots that eventually become cold shots. We're getting this early cold, and then right on December 1st, we'll go to a ridge in the east, and temperatures will be 10 degrees above normal.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Oh
yeah, the
well.
European is not,
Yes.
the European's a little different than the GFS is. The late run GFS, I mean, they kind of, it still has that active northern trough. The first one early next week is nothing to write home about. Then there's one behind it, and then after that, I don't know. You could, this only goes out to 10 days, so I'm not sure where we're going to go from here. If there's another arm that comes down, there's something dropping down into the Gulf of Alaska, and the upper high is up in New Mexico. So I'm trying to visualize where this may go, but I can already see pieces up in northern Hudson Bay and further north from there that may try to drop into the east and drop in another trough. So uh, you got to prove it to me. At the end of the day, that's kind of how I'm looking at this. Prove it to me that this pattern is going to change, because I'm right now, I am I'm not seeing it. And again, my you heard at the beginning, folks, what my definition of hot is. Okay, and it's not mid to upper 80s. Okay, it's got to be 90 plus for 4 or 5 days in a row or longer. Otherwise, I'm not impressed. And here's our our thunderstorms. Excuse me, for tomorrow. Just want to show you, folks, the 700. I always like to look at that 700 millibar to look at the jet streaks. And I mean, there are some here tomorrow evening. They seem to be a little more pronounced across Massachusetts and on up into northern Vermont and Maine. There's a couple of darker spots. There's one in southern New Jersey, another one in in Chesapeake Bay, and then a stretch that runs from just north of Route 84 by you, and then goes across into northeastern Pennsylvania. Uh, obviously I've seen much more impressive 700 millibar views for the thunderstorms than this one is, but the bottom part of the atmosphere below it is going to be very unstable tomorrow. They got Cape values, I think, up over 2,000, so that might help the thunderstorm cause. Let's put it that way.
All right. I've received a message today from an old friend of ours, the chairman, Scott Briller, and he just wants to uh, say that he wants to let everybody know that his Briller Jeopardy on the Road tour is going well, and Briller Jeopardy will return to the Joe and Joe show next Monday, July 18th. He also read about the super buck moon for tonight. Actually, Scott, it's not tonight, it's Wednesday night. And you wanted to know if we could mention that. We'll talk a little bit more about that maybe on Wednesday. And something called the Parade of Planets this week. Well, the planets, except for Mercury, which has left the scene now in the morning sky. If you go outside, let's say an hour to, let's say 30 minutes to an hour before sunrise, there they all are. All the rest of the planets, bright planets, naked eye planets, are arrayed across the sky. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, they're all out there. But you have to get up again in the wee hours. Don't forget the sun now is rising at like 5:30 in the morning. So it's best that you get up at 4:30 or 4:45 if you want to see all of those planets stretched out across your eastern and southern sky. I myself have a problem. I would have to get into the car and travel a few miles to the elementary school where it's up on a high hill above the tree line. But for all of those of you who have a good view toward the east and south, there you can see the planets. And again, we'll talk maybe a bit more on Wednesday about the super moon coming up on Wednesday night. Good thing, Joe, we don't have any kind of tropical system adjacent to the Gulf or the eastern United States of significance. because the tides without a storm will be running noticeably higher than normal because of the full moon, and there'd be even more of aggravation if we did have some kind of a tropical system turning the waters up out there. But thankfully, that is not the case.
Agreed. So I'm going to run through the I'll run through the GFS SOIFUS. We'll take a look at that. And there you have it here, folks. So here's tomorrow with our cold front with some showers and storms. That front actually is going to hang around just offshore on Wednesday. The push behind it really comes. There's a second upper trough on Thursday that moves on through. And it's behind that we get probably a bit more of relevant, slightly more relevant dew point relief for Friday into Saturday. And notice that there's a fair amount of rain being indicated from Delaware on south through the Carolinas, which WPC reflects in that forecast. And it actually, the northern edge of that at times gets to about southern New Jersey, but it's hard to imagine it getting much further north than that. And then, of course, we start to get warmer and more humid Sunday into Monday with some scattered showers and thunderstorms in the mix probably on Monday. This particular run of the GFS, instead of bringing another cold front on through on Monday, it waits until Tuesday, something dropping down from eastern Canada. But there's no real push behind it, so it's a little bit different on this run. Again, it's one of the off-hour runs, so I would just wait to see what it has to say. And by the way, on the last day, I can't read the thickness. 552 thickness is into northern Michigan, so 558, 564. You got this, that big upper trough is just beginning to drop into the eastern part of the United States. So the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Southeast, seeing some, I bet you the dew points, if this were correct, we could fantasize about it anyway. For those of you who like dry air. I mean, it's got dew points. It's got dew points in the 50s, all the way down into southern Georgia, which for this time of year, that's almost unheard of. But you could see the beginnings of some very low dew points down in the 40s over the Great Lakes and Northern Plains. So you can only imagine that would come to the east. Again, it's so far out in the long range that it's fantasy land. However, remember the pattern that we're in. So if it disappears and then shows up again in a week later, if we don't see it there for a week and then after a week it comes back on the maps, don't be too surprised.
Yeah, that sometimes happens. You see something, let's say 8 or 10 days out. You say, "Oh, well, we'll see what happens." Then it just disappears a few days later, and you say, "Well, so much for that." And then all of a sudden, it rears its head again just 2 or 3 days before the actual event. So sometimes you really can't say, or what you're looking at that far out, 9, 10 days out, is actually going to happen, or whether or not it's just as you said, Joe, a fantasy.
So I am now 110 episodes into my binging of the entire series of Perry Mason, Joe, and I have to tell you, I've run into a few episodes that I've never seen before. So that was a plus. And for some reason, two of them that I haven't seen have Ruta Lee in it. So that was that was interesting to see. And by the way, I think she might have been in at least 4 episodes. She was the murderess in one episode. She was not a victim in the other 3. She was a defendant in one episode, and then she was a part of the equation, but not directly involved in the murders in the other 2. I also saw one that I hadn't seen where, and this was kind of funny. Hamilton Berger goes on vacation with his friends duck hunting, and apparently a friend of his who had saved his life years ago was the primary suspect, and he called Perry Mason and asked Perry to come up and defend the guy. And Hamilton says, asked Perry if he would defend him because Hamilton Berger was too close to the case, so he had to step back. And he asked Perry to defend the guy, and he said Perry's response was, "I'll defend him, Hamilton, in spite of the fact that he saved your life." And while the trial is going on, the guy who has to substitute him, the attorney general had to appoint somebody to substitute for him. So Hamilton Berger's sitting in the courtroom at the back of the courtroom, just watching the trial, and the guy objects to something that Perry's doing, and Hamilton mumbles under his breath, but loud enough so that the audience hears it, where he says, "Oh, why don't you be quiet?" And then the judge overruled the prosecutor, and Hamilton goes, "Good." It was an interesting dynamic to see, because they're on the first couple of seasons. The two of them are very adversarial, professionally adversarial, but you don't see too much of them personally in shots. You start to get into later in the second season and the third season. There's a little bit more of a relationship between the two. That's a little friendlier outside of the courtroom. So it was kind of interesting to see. And of course, I'm continuing to post on Facebook all the fabulous hats that they have some of these women wearing. They're just some of them are just horrible. Absolute. This one woman, Joe, yesterday, she had on a hat, and it looked like strands of seaweed were hanging off.
I saw that.
Yeah, you saw that post?
I saw that.
Yes.
And the thing that to me is that one actor who appears more often than not in Perry Mason was King Tut, Victor
Oh,
Buono.
Victor Buono. Yeah, he's in a few of them.
Yeah.
He's in a few episodes.
And so it's so weird to watch these Perry Masons, and you see people who you recognize from other television. I mean, even I saw the commissioner, from
Oh yeah,
Batman.
he's I think he's also shown up in 4 episodes so far.
So it's kind of strange when you see it's a completely different world, a fantasy world, when you're watching these Perry Mason episodes. So, well, enjoy the rest of your binge watching. You're what, about halfway through all of them now? Or?
Not quite. I got another 20 or so episodes, and then I'll be halfway.
Yeah. And then you won't have to deal anymore with those advertisements at the end with the credits, like Beadzo Bleach.
Oh well, I've noticed on the on the credits that run on the end, in season 2, the latter part of season 2 and season 3, every episode has a different one. Like there was a Colgate, there was Colgate on one, and I guess that was before Colgate merged with the Palmolive company, because then there were some Palmolive labels there on the credits. And what was the other? What was the one? What's the cleanser? Do you remember the cleanser?
Not Ajax.
No, it was not a cleanser that I think was familiar in the East Coast. It was maybe more something on the West Coast. At the first season, it was like in the lower. I always remember. Now I can't remember the name. It had like a girlish name, Dutch girl cleanser.
Yeah, that sounds.
Was that it? Yeah. And I'm watching it on Freevee. Okay, Freeve. That's the old IMDb, the Internet Movie Database channel, which was bought by Amazon, and now they changed it to Freebie. Freevee, with a V as in Victor.
So, actually, Old Dutch.
Old Dutch. There you go. Yes.
Yeah.
Old Dutch cleanser. All right, 8:21 Eastern Time. I hope everybody had enjoyed the show tonight, and Joe and I will be back tomorrow at the usual shopping time, which is 7:30 Eastern. We hope to see you then.
We'll be here 7:30 tomorrow night, Joe.
Absolutely. Nighty night, everybody.